Perhaps the episode that has incensed the most people was the American role in the overthrow of the socialist government of Chile's President Allende in 1973. The report says there is no doubt that President Nixon wanted to topple the Allende government, and there is no doubt he supported efforts in Chile to drive Allende from office. One of the victims of these efforts was General René Snyder, the Army Chief of Staff in Chile. Snyder strongly believed in constitutional government and at the same time strongly opposed military coups. He was considered a major obstacle in attempts to oust Allende. But he was killed in a kidnap attempt in 1970 in an action that raised many questions about the American role in Chile. Now, let's review the 5 cases covered in the committee's report released today. They involved Congo leader Patrice Lumumba, South Vietnamese President Diem, the dictator of the Dominican Republic, Rafael Trujillo, Army General René Snyder of Chile, and Fidel Castro of Cuba. Castro was viewed as a diplomatic thorn in the side of America from the moment he took power in 1959. U.S. officials feared the establishment of a Russian outpost in our backyard and immediately mobilized to curb Castro's power, to quarantine Cuba, and as the report tells us in rather elaborate detail, to do a great deal more.
Fidel Castro. We have found concrete evidence of at least 8 plots involving CIA to assassinate Fidel Castro from 1960 to 1965. Although some of the plots did not advance beyond the stage of planning and preparation, one plot involving the use of underworld figures reportedly twice progressed to the point of sending poison pills to Cuba and dispatching teams to commit the deed. Another plot involved furnishing weapons and other assassination devices to a Cuban dissident. The proposed assassination devices ran the gamut from high-powered rifles to poison pills, poison pens, deadly bacterial powders, and other materials which strain the imagination. The most ironic of these plots took place on November 22, 1963, the very day President Kennedy was shot in Dallas, when a CIA official offered a poison pen to a Cuban for use against Castro, while at the same time an emissary from President Kennedy was meeting with Castro to explore the possibility of improved relations. Operation Mongoose. In November 1962, President Kennedy issued a memorandum recording his decision to begin the Mongoose project to use our available assets to help Cuba overthrow the communist regime. The ultimate objective of Mongoose was to have the people themselves overthrow the Castro regime rather than U.S.-engineered efforts from outside Cuba. Although the collection of intelligence information was the central objective of Mongoose until August 1962, sabotage and paramilitary actions were also conducted, including a major sabotage operation aimed at a large Cuban copper mine. The efforts to assassinate Castro took place in an atmosphere of extreme pressure by Eisenhower and Kennedy administration officials to discredit and overthrow the Castro regime. Shortly after Castro's ascendancy to power, Allen Dulles directed that thorough consideration be given to the elimination of Castro. But there was insufficient evidence from which the committee could conclude that Presidents Eisenhower, Kennedy, or Johnson, their close advisors, or a special group authorized any assassination.
There's evidence that during the Cuban Missile Crisis, when our government finally realized that that was at stake, that we tried to call off operatives in Cuba that may have been trying to get Castro killed, but we had no assurances that we in fact had reached them or called them off. So that you set in motion things which may be horrible in concept, but may be unbelievable when it finally played out to its final conclusion.
Going back to Cuba, may we follow through in Cuba? Now that these various plots against Castro have been officially revealed, what do you think this will do to our efforts to normalize relations with Cuba?
Well, Castro was the first to know of these attempts long before the American people. The committee found a certain irony in the fact that a poison pen device was being passed for the purpose of assassinating Castro on the very day that President Kennedy was assassinated in Dallas.